Yes, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. I am pleased that you all followed our invitation to a press conference this morning. You have noticed by now that the four of us, the four party chairmen of CDU, CSU, and SPD, have spent the weekend together and discussed intensively the issues that concern us at the moment. The international situation, the situation in Europe, but also the situation in Germany. We all share the concern of the citizens of our country that we are in a very difficult economic situation, but also in a difficult political situation in view of the large number of crises and wars that we are currently experiencing in the world. And that has an impact on Germany. That has an impact on the very specific life situation of many people in our country. And that's what we've been dealing with, and we've made a number of very specific decisions about that. First of all, we have decided on immediate aid in view of the rising energy prices and have tackled two major reform projects at the same time. That is the legal health insurance. And of course, we have also dealt with the federal budget for 2027. And finally, we have agreed on a tax reform for low and middle-income groups for January 1st, 2027, which is now being worked on in great detail. These are major reform projects. I am glad that we have agreed in the coalition, partly from different points of view, that we are now tackling these issues together and that we are now making our state more modern and just. But let me also make it clear that this is only the beginning. These were not final consultations yesterday, but the start of a whole series of consultations that we will continue. This weekend, we have dealt with reform ideas for a modern and dynamic state. In the end, the belief, the confidence of the people in the functionality of our country must be strengthened, and where it has been lost, it must be restored. And that we also respect and acknowledge those who do a lot in our country, and these are most of them. In this sense, we need confidence and good mood again, also for a good future in our country. This is what I work on as Chancellor, but the colleagues from the coalition do the same. The most important thing, first of all, we have decided on a relief for the citizens in view of the rising fuel prices. We will reduce the energy tax, i.e. the mineral oil tax, for diesel and gasoline by around 17 cents per liter for 2 months. This will improve the situation for the drivers and for the companies in the country very quickly, and above all for those who, for professional reasons, travel a lot by car. This applies to the workers but also to the companies. The mineral oil tax affects everyone, and it is a very concrete relief, as I said, for private households as well as for companies. So, for example, for shipping companies, for nursing homes, for those who are particularly affected by the high fuel prices at the moment. In this context, we expect that the mineral oil industry will continue this relief directly and without restrictions on the consumers. I said last week that we will await the political development. Yesterday, Iran and the USA temporarily canceled the negotiations on the ceasefire. The American president announced a blockade of the Straits of Hormuz. The oil prices rose again overnight to over $100 per barrel. This shows that this conflict, this war, is the actual cause for the problems that we also have in our own country. That is why I want to say very clearly once again that we are doing everything in our power to ensure that this war is ended. This applies to the foreign minister, but it also applies to me personally. As far as we can influence this, we want to do this together with our European partners. At the same time, we cannot compensate for every result in the markets with state funds. That is why we have limited them to 2 months. The state cannot cope with all the uncertainties, all the risks, and all the disruptions in world politics. The state is ultimately all of us. What we take from our households is missing elsewhere. That is why this support is limited to 2 months. After that, the old tax rate will automatically apply again. To be honest, this means that prices will rise again. Within these 2 months, these prices will also develop. We hope that they will develop in the right direction, namely downwards. We want to try to compensate for this in this sense. You all know that at the end of February, we received the results of the Financial Commission on the reform of the legal health insurance. That is why we decided yesterday that at the end of April, we will pass a corresponding draft law in the Cabinet, which will move on the basis of the decisions and recommendations of the Commission. We have basically approved these ideas, the proposals of the Commission, and the Ministry is now in charge of completing the draft law. Our goal is that this law will be passed in the German Bundestag by the summer break. I know that this is an ambitious timetable, but we want to implement it decisively. We agree that the proposals of the Commission should be the cornerstones of the reform. We will therefore basically implement as many proposals as possible from the Commission. I also want to say that all affected people, all areas of performance, will have to make a contribution. In particular, we want to keep the contribution sets stable. This is also a meeting of yesterday and the day before yesterday. We want to avoid the contribution set increases, which otherwise threaten to be avoided by corresponding corrections in the performance offer. We want to avoid the contribution set increases on the expenditure side. As a result, this is one of the largest social state reforms in our country. It has been decades since the legal health insurance system has been reformed in this scope. We will do it. We all know that our tax system needs to be reformed, and I would like to say this in conclusion. We have agreed that we will first offer employers in Germany a relief bonus of 1,000 euros, free of social insurance and tax. You know the pattern. This already existed during the energy crisis a few years ago. At that time, it was 3,000 euros. This is now a contribution of 1,000 euros, which we want to enable employers to pay out to employees, free of tax and free of social insurance. Such a bonus is therefore privileged in terms of tax and social insurance. This means that this relief bonus can be paid out directly by the employers and can also be made taxable. This is an effort in which companies can also be taxed. Such a payment would then also be a relief for the wallet of the employees in view of rising gasoline prices. Last word on the income tax reform. We have agreed that we will advise and prepare it intensively in the next few weeks. It should come into force on the 1st January 2027. We thus fulfill a promise from the coalition agreement. And one more word on the automotive industry. We have had a very intense discussion about the future of combustion. Yesterday, we agreed on the German position on the CO2 fleet limit values. We agree that we will reject the CO2 values of the hybrid vehicles as prescribed for 2027. This concerns the so-called utility factor. In concrete terms, this means that we will avoid a deterioration of hybrid vehicles and other technologies in the area of environmental integration. There must be no break-off for these important technologies. We are now going into the further discussion in Brussels with full technological openness. We have agreed that cars will be considered as zero-emissions cars, which are powered by renewable fuels, such as advanced biofuels. And with a whole series of other instruments for calculating the fleet limit values, we are significantly reducing the economic burden of the German automotive industry. So we are taking a very good position here, which is identical to the position of not only the automotive industry, but also IG Metall, which has once again challenged us to make corrections in the last few days. We are taking this exact position, and we are going into the negotiations in Brussels with great impetus. Ladies and gentlemen, this is, so to speak, the conclusion of yesterday's meeting. We have agreed that every reform in our society is a force in a difficult time. But at the weekend, we also took the clear feeling that we are committed to fulfilling this task. We are doing this in a really good spirit of cooperation in the coalition. And we know that we still have a lot to do. This is just the beginning. We need further major structural reforms for our country. The Pension Commission will submit its proposals at the end of June. Immediately afterwards, we will initiate the same process as now with the health insurance, also with the pension insurance. Immediately afterwards, we will also go into the legislative process. So we are on a good common path here. We know that the whole thing is not without effort, also for us. But the coalition works well, trustworthily together. And the weekend was a good success for us from this point of view. We also hope for the country. And I would like to thank my colleagues for the really good cooperation over this weekend. We struggled hard, but we came to good results together. And this is exactly what we want to achieve now. Thank you very much.